Thank you for tuning in to The Management Game, the podcast for managers who don't know what the hell they're doing. We're your hosts, Vicki Brown and Suzanne Ferris. And this week, we're going to talk about knowing your people. A manager's ultimate job is to get the work done through their direct reports. If you don't have a team, you don't need a manager. So people work is relationship work, and the better you know the people on your team, the easier your job will be. Today, we'll talk a little bit about the how and the why to know your people.
Let's see. People are complicated, and that's what makes management one of the most difficult as well as one of the most rewarding jobs out there. You just absolutely never know what you're going to be faced with on any given day at any given hour.
Right, you've got different people dealing with different situations, dealing with emergencies, and it just never is going to be the same thing on any given day.
Which is what I absolutely love, is the unexpectedness of management. You could have someone that needs some advice around a personal issue, followed immediately by, your boss coming in and telling you that a project has been, the due date for it has been changed. So, it varies so much. And that's what makes it challenging for me and for all the managers that I've ever coached.
Here's the thing. As a manager, we have to deal with so much that's changing all the time. There are so many factors involved. There's the work itself. There's deadlines. There's personnel. And there's personal issues that come up. There are people that don't get along. There are people that get along too well. And I think that a way to help a manager not be so stressed out and navigate through some of this is by knowing the people that they're dealing with, by getting to know them as people. It can really help make things go a little easier.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Vicki. And your approach to each of these different kinds of situations that might come up as a manager will be influenced by how well you know the individuals that are part of any particular situation. If you've got a good relationship with someone, then talking to them about the fact that a project is now due in 2 weeks instead of 2 months makes it easier.
Right.
Because you know how they're going to react. You know their style.
Yeah, and you've hit on the key word right there. It's building the relationship. You cannot have a relationship with someone if you don't know who they are. Think about it in everyday relationships. Think about when we're first meeting someone, when we're first starting to date someone. The idea is to develop this knowledge to get to know each other well enough that we can have a relationship. And the idea of the relationship is we want to do that in order to be successful in whatever it is we're doing, whether it's starting a job, starting a family, whatever. It all comes down to the relationship.
Absolutely. And one of the first steps in starting to build a relationship with individuals on your team is to overtly and consciously show them that you want to get to know them. I really encourage managers to use the words with their teammates that say, I want to get to know you better.
Yeah, come right out and tell them.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, there's no reason for a hidden agenda.
No, not at all. There's a lot of different ways to move into getting to know your team, but the first one is just being honest and straightforward at the beginning.
Right. And at the same time that you can go in, that a manager can go in and say, I want to get to know you better. The other side of the coin is, I also want you to get to know me. Relationships are a two-way street.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, and there are some real specific techniques on how to open up to your team.
So let's talk about some of the ways that teams, managers and teams, can get to know each other better. What are some of the things that you've seen, or some of the things you suggest?
You know, I talked about this in another session. There are some very formal team assessments. You can bring in a consultant to do something around a 5 dynamics workshop, or Strength Finders is another one that is a formal kind of assessment to understand the team dynamics and the individual dynamics. There's also some light and funny and free assessments. We like free. One of them is the animal quiz. And in this one you answer, you know, of these 4 words, which one is most like you, and you go through that exercise 20 times or so, different sets of words, and you come out with 4 different types of animals. It usually does boil down to 4 to 5 different types. There's a lion, there's a cocker spaniel, there's a beaver, and I always forget what the 4th one is. I always have to look it up. But it's a fun and light way that you take 20 minutes out of a staff meeting and just play with this assessment, but it gives you insights.
Sure, lions are very different from beavers or
Cocker
spaniels.
Absolutely.
I have a question for you. So let's say you've got a new team, and you want to get to know each other. Is it better, in your opinion, to start with a formal assessment? Okay, we're gonna learn about each other, and hopefully this will give us some insight. Or to do something a lot less formal. For example, my approach, I'm a big kid, right? I'm maybe 14 at the most, so I like to play. So I would do things with my team to get them enjoying each other. One of the things that I would do, for example, is I'd put them into teams of 2, and I put them back to back. And I'd simply have one person describe something in the room, and the other person that had their back to them had to try to draw it. It was hysterical, but they learned not only about each other, but they learned how to communicate. And so I'm more of a playful type.
Yeah. And each team may need something different. I think I would advise a manager to start with the informal.
Okay.
And things like what you just described, or, you know, the animal assessment thing, or some others that do some icebreaker.
Something that's
types
not
of work. Yeah.
Something that's not intimidating.
Light, ease into it. Then maybe after the team has worked together for a period of time and need that impetus to take them to the next level, then bring in something more formal. And you really need to understand each other a little bit better for those kinds of things to be the most effective.
Well, I think the formal, just in thinking about it, a formal type of assessment at the beginning may be intimidating, and you don't have the trust to do that. Okay, I'm your new manager, and today we're going to sit down and take a 20-minute assessment to...
Well, doesn't it also tell you something about the manager? I mean, there may be some implications that are drawn about what kind of new manager this is. They're
Okay.
hands off, they're very formal,
They're bringing in the professional to help us learn about each. Okay, that makes sense.
versus this is someone that we can play with, that we can have a good time with, that's still our leader, but maybe a little bit lighter.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Some other things, Vicki, that we forget are ways of understanding who our team are is something as simple as spending some social time together outside of the office, like a picnic, celebrating someone's birthday, celebrating an achievement like passing a particular license that you need for your job. Those kinds of social interactions are fantastic and are very team building exercises.
Yeah, I just thinking about that. Doing a coffee run. You know, as the manager, I'm going to go out for a cup of coffee. Does anybody want anything? It doesn't have to be grandiose and large. It could be something as simple as saying, I acknowledge you as part of the team. I like working with you. Let's do this.
Yeah. There's many ways. One way, again, I think people overlook the value of regular scheduled one-on-ones.
Yeah.
To get to know the team. You have an opportunity to, in this particular case, unlike the others we've talked about, but to spend one-on-one time with a person and to dedicate some time to them, to demonstrate to them how important they are to you, and to demonstrate how important they are to you by dedicating some of your time with them. You know, one-on-ones can be check-ins about projects, they can be, tell me what you need from me kind of things, and they can also be clear opportunities to show your appreciation for an employee,
Right.
to listen to what their frustrations might be, what roadblocks they've had, what successes they've had.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we teach supervisors and managers to hold one-on-ones, we get locked into the formal process. It's time to check to make sure everything is aligned and we're doing what we're supposed to. But
or even think they have to do a mini performance review.
Yes.
Which is not the purpose of a one-on-one.
No. It's one-on-one time. It's exactly what it says. Time for us to figure out what we need, what we can do to help each other, learn a little bit more about each other. And all of these go into, again, strengthening that relationship and making it easier to get the work done because we're dealing with known entities, not some stranger that's just walked in the door to do the work.
And, I strongly encourage twice a month one-on-ones with folks. If your time is really, really tight, make those half-an-hour meetings. But be prepared, both of you. I like having a very specific agenda that we're going to follow, but something open-ended, like old business, catch me up on the things that we've talked about in the past, new business, and questions you have for me. 3 big buckets that then the employee fills them out.
So Sue, do you set the agenda or does the employee set the agenda based on your guidelines? Who basically directs the flow of the conversation?
It is, the agenda is set, the format is set by me.
Okay.
The details are filled in by the employee.
Okay.
And the flow, who manages the flow, it passes back and forth between us as the time goes on. I may have some questions about some of the new business they might be bringing up. And for the other, I'm just kind of going, yeah, for them relaying to me what's going on a particular project.
Okay, so one of the things I'm tasked with doing one-on-ones with my students. And there's one thing in doing in meeting that we have to accomplish. We must review their resumes and their cover letters and tweak them. So when I have them set the rest of the agenda.
Okay.
And since we don't do them as often as you suggest, I tell them this is what we're going to do. We are mandated, if you will, by Braven to meet twice a semester for an hour. What I will do, because students are a little more vulnerable and they're stressed out with their job of being a student, I give them that first part, and then I tell them that we will talk about whatever they need and have them fill that into the agenda. And this is where I really get to know them. The conversations go into, they may start out with, I'm having problems with time management, but then they may even get pretty personal. This is what I need help with that has nothing to do with school. And that's how I find out how I can best help them and follow up to help them succeed with their classes. So the one-on-one is a valuable tool.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, when you say you suggest, what did you say, twice a month?
Twice a month, every other week.
Is that for consistency, or is it, what is the purpose of twice a month?
Yeah. What I have found is when we meet twice a month, there are no surprises.
Oh, okay.
Things haven't gone on so long that they're way down a path that is not going to be productive for the employee.
So you're talking at this point about getting the work, keeping consistent with the work product.
Yes.
Okay.
And sometimes we cancel them. If there's no questions on the employee's part, we update each other on a quick email or instant message, and we cancel the formal one-on-one.
Yeah, here's a clue for all of you managers out there. Never hold meetings just for the sake of holding a meeting.
Yeah. If you can cancel it appropriately, great. But also remember that for many of our employees, this is their time with you.
Yes.
All the other time that you may interact with them, it's with the entire team. And some of your more junior or more quiet, introspective employees need that one-on-one time because they're not confident enough to speak up and ask their questions in a team meeting. So
True.
There's value in both.
And just because you schedule an hour doesn't mean it has to last an hour.
Or if you need it and you can, and you're right in the middle of something very, very important, extend the meeting.
Absolutely.
That's your prerogative as the manager.
Well, it goes back to finding out what people need, again, getting to know them, and giving them what they need to be successful.
Absolutely.
And one of the things employees need most, I believe, from managers, and it's why we manage, is our time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Again, this is how I manage. It may not work for everyone, but my last question for them in almost every one-on-one is, what do you need from me?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I might end that question with, what do you need from me to finish this project on time? What do you need from me to work better with that other person? Sometimes it's left very, very open-ended. What do you need?
And if you don't know anything about that other person, then it makes your job difficult. But if you know both parties, let's say there's a conflict, if you know both parties in that conflict, it's going to make it easier for you to help employee A work better with employee B.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, it goes without saying, Vicki, but it's still important to say, words matter.
Absolutely.
The way that you come across to an employee, the tone you use, the body language you use, not picking up your phone and checking to see who that text was from, all of that matters. And it boils down to respect, to giving this person your attention for this period of time.
Right.
It shows and demonstrates real respect. And learning enough about that person to know what their triggers are, to know what kinds of things will hurt them, will anger them, will shut them down.
Yeah, and there are some things to be aware of when you're making this conscious attempt to get to know people. You have to be careful not to cross the line, to make sure that if your team is very diverse and you're trying to understand about maybe their culture, or you're trying to understand about somebody's family, you love kids and you want to know how the kids are doing or how the spouse is doing or whatever, not to cross the line so that your inquiries become too personal or they become inappropriate for the workplace.
And you can always take the technique of start broad. Tell me about your family.
And if I don't want to tell you about my family, then I have the option.
Family's fine.
They're great.
Yeah. But let the employee guide the depth of that answer, and then you can respond.
Although, I would suggest be very careful when you say, tell me about your grandkids, because you'll never get out of the conversation.
And you know what? May feel a little ageist if I don't have grandkids, but you're telling me I look like I'm old enough to.
Well, no, I mean, if you know someone has grandkids, you see their pictures on their desk. I've gotten into conversations with grandparents where it's been like, okay, I have to go now.
Yeah, but absolutely, but not going, good example here is, what did you do this weekend? Did you have some fun this weekend? And they start telling you about a party, and then it would be very appropriate to say, well, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Okay.
Not very appropriate to say, well, how drunk did you get?
Yes.
Yeah. And it may sound obvious, but you will know by the reaction of the employee whether or not you've stepped over that line.
And the truth of the matter is, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but you do have to be very, very careful, because if you step over the line, then that may trigger some official action by the organization. So keep it broad, keep it light, but do take the opportunity to know more about your team members, besides when they work, how much money you have to pay them, and if they come to work on time.
Yeah. And all of this boils down to what we started off at the beginning talking about, is building relationships, good relationships at work. And the first thing, one of the most essential aspects of that is building trust.
You can't have a relationship without trust. Well, you can, but you can't have a good relationship without a foundation built on trust.
And it doesn't happen automatic, just simply because you are now in the office and they're in the cubicle doesn't mean there's now trust. It takes, I think of it as a bridge, and bridges are built one piece of lumber at a time. It's not an automatic, thing that a bridge is just bought and you insert a bridge. It takes time, it takes deliberate effort to collaborate with your teammates and your staff. To maybe part of building trust is delegating to a teammate, someone who may not have the skills or the experience yet to complete a task, but you delegate it to them.
And it's also about having a degree of transparency. You, in wanting to learn about them, you're asking them to be a bit transparent, but you also have to have that transparency. When you talk about vulnerability, it's not like you as a manager have had a bad day and you're going to go crying your eyes out to your staff member, but letting them see who you are. One of my favorite quotes is from Maya Angelou, and she says, when people show you who they are, believe them. That's what knowing people is all about. It's about showing who you are, seeing who they are, so that you're believable.
And vulnerability shown by a manager can be a huge aspect of building trust on the team by saying, I need your help with this. You're the expert in this area and I need your expertise, is a huge compliment to the employee and does not diminish your authority and your position in any way.
And it will help them open up even more to you. So what are some of the things that, we talked about needing to be respectful, needing to have trust in order to get to know people. What are a couple of the other ways that we can do that to learn more about our colleagues and our teammates?
Well, I think being open to a wide range of legitimately open to a wide range of different cultures and points of view, not being the absolute authority and the final decision maker on things, but exploring a range of different options.
That just reminded me, many years ago, I worked in a retail operation and I had a staff party. But what we decided to do, we all met at my house and we had a potluck. And we were culturally and ethnically very diverse. So we had everybody bring food from their particular culture. And not only was it a great meal, but it was a lot of fun. I just thought of that when we were talking about differences in cultures and stuff. You could do something like that. It was great.
Yeah. And I thought you were going to go to a different example that we both know about, and this is what not to do. Managers holding a team meeting that runs through lunch, so he decides that he's going to order pizza for everyone. And they'll just all get up, get their slices of pizza and sit down and finish the meeting.
No.
So it did not go over well. A lot of people left the meeting, went to their own area to have lunch. Couple of things went so wrong. One was the meeting went over its normal time and people were not expecting to work through lunch. And even more important, he never considered the whole team when he ordered this particular meal. Several of his teammates were on diets and or had gluten issues and couldn't eat pizza. So it was a good gesture, became a slap in the face to several of his staff.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that vividly now that you're talking about it. But use your team members as a way to explore areas you don't know about. One of the exercises I like to do, you mentioned icebreakers earlier, and I will pair up people in a meeting or in a workshop, and I usually pair up people that don't know each other, that aren't working together, and I'll do a simple Venn diagram on a piece of paper. I'll post them all over the room, and person A has one circle and person B has the other circle, and I have them talk to each other for about 5 minutes about anything. I don't control the conversation. And as they learn things about each other, they write them in their individual circles. But as they learn about the things that they have in common, they write them in the overlapping circles. And not only is it insightful, but then I will walk around the room and I will point out some of these things in the overlapping circles. For example, I had a dispatcher and a director that didn't know they both loved fishing. It's a way, again, to open the door and shed a little light on who the person is inside of the worker.
Yeah. And what you're talking about, Vicki, is a celebration and a welcoming of diversity. And diversity goes so much deeper than just simply, do I have one representative from each race?
Yeah, checking the box.
Diversity of culture, diversity of thought, diversity of just process, how you think through things, is very expanding and very inclusive for a team to speak about. You know, and all of this, everything we've been talking about has a golden thread almost running through it of open and honest communications.
Yeah, that's the key.
You know, when you have trust and when you have respect for each other, that's when you can have open and honest communications. You encourage differences in thought, and you bring out those differences because they're going to make you stronger. You can't have one without the other. You can't have the respect without the open communications.
Totally agree. And that's a great place, I think, for us to stop this week. So I'd like to thank you for joining us here on The Management Game. And we're your hosts, Vicki Brown and Suzanne Ferris. So just a reminder that you can view today's show notes and download the transcript from our website at VABrownConsulting.com. You can also drop us a line there and get information about our services, give us feedback on today's show, or even suggestions for further shows. So thanks again, and we'll see you next week, where we'll stop and take a closer look at communication, the number one skill that can make or break you as a manager.